you can write just you can write you can write the code once and then share it across these platforms. So what this does is that one, as we've already seen, it reduces development costs. Also, unlike other cross-platform technologies, Kotlin multi-platform also gives you the flexibility to decide exactly what to share across platforms. So you can decide to share just the data layer. You can decide to share just the domain. You can decide to share just the presentation, or you can share any combination of these. So this also increases consistency, right? So if you write the exact same logic once, that means it's you have a very low possibility of each platform behaving differently, unlike if you had multiple teams writing the logic for each of these platforms separately with different frameworks or languages. So at my current engagement, which is premise data, we use Kotlin multi-platform. We were sort of early adopters to the framework. And currently what we are using it for is we mostly use it to share code among just two platforms, our Android and also our iOS apps. So we currently just share our data and also we share our networking and also analytics logic among these two platforms. Previously, or before we adopted Kotlin multi-platform, especially, we had issues especially with analytics because it's possible for iOS to have different logic or different events that they track, and Android to also have different events that we also track. Sometimes we will be tracking one event and then we get a message from product that's, okay, we don't need this event anymore. We want to track this other event. But it's at that point, maybe Android will be busy with other features. So iOS will implement this and Android won't have this particular event property or event that will be tracking, which means there was a sort of a discrepancy between these two platforms. But by using Kotlin multi-platform, we are able to write the code once and then we share. So that means even if the iOS team was the team that worked on this, adding this events or analytics property to the projects, once Android updates the version, we also have that and automatically we are tracking this as well. So my colleague, Nate Evil, gave a very excellent talk on how we are currently doing this at Premise 2 years ago at DroidCon. So I will highly encourage everyone on the call to check this out. I'm posting the link in the chat. Right, so if anyone is interested, I highly encourage you to check it out, especially if you're adapting Kotlin multi-platform in already existing or a brownfield application. So, curious, is anybody on the call currently using Kotlin multi-platform? And if you are using Kotlin multi-platform, what is your experience with this so far?
Don't be shy. I guess a couple of us probably are using Kotlin multi-platform. So you could just share how long you've been using it and how it has worked for you, what your experience has been like. Feel free to come off mute.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, sorry, please, Timothy.
Okay.
I'm Timothy. So I just want to be clear on this. Is this different from the Jetpack Compose?
Yes. So we will get to this in the next slide, which is Compose multi-platform, but these are two separate technologies. So Jetpack Compose is for only Android, but Compose multi-platform can be used on these multiple platforms. So Jetpack Compose was created by Google, and then Compose multi-platform was created by JetBrains. So they are separate technologies. though they are using the exact same Compose framework.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear because I've been working with Jetpack Compose for a while, so I just want to be sure we're saying different things.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome, Timothy. Thank you for sharing. I mean, while we still have you, I'm curious to know how your experience has been so far. I mean, feel free to share. Has it been great? What are the advantages? Are there any things that you've noticed? Please let us know. Not to put you on the spot though.
Okay, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so from my own experience, let me see. I haven't used it. I haven't used KMP because yeah, when I attempted to use this cross-platform stuff, the Compose multi-platform was not there. It was early last year. I attempted to use the KMP. Actually, I didn't succeed in using it because of a lot of configuration at that time. Because that time, at that early time of coming out, it was very difficult to run the configuration, even to set up your machine to work with the KMP. But based on my opinion, let me see. I believe if this compose, because I'm looking at, because currently I'm building a product which is actually solely on compose, Jetpack Compose.
I think we lost Rabiul there. So I think we could proceed with the workshop. Rabiul Muhammad, if you can hear us, just put in your thoughts in the chat while we continue with, the workshop. Thank you so much for sharing.
All right, so with the recent, so before I move on, yes, previously setting up Kotlin multi-platform was indeed tricky. You would typically have multiple Gradle issues because at that time it was in alpha and also later in beta, but now it's stable. So I would advise those who previously used it and had issues with it to give it a try again. And I think most of the issues you previously had, you won't have it in the latest stable versions. All right, so with the recent release of Compose multi-platform, now this code sharing is not only limited to your data, your domain, your presentation, right? Now you can also share this code or UI code from across multiple platforms, so the platform that we already see. So currently, Kotlin multi-platform technology supports desktop, Android, iOS, and also web. So now, with the addition of Compose multi-platform, you can basically use the entire Kotlin multi-platform technology to develop an application from front to back with just one technology, which is Kotlin multi-platform. So that means you write just your UI components once, and then you have them render across multiple platforms. So currently, Android and desktop are stable and they are very much production ready, but web is still in alpha, and also iOS was also in alpha, but previously or recently promoted to beta, actually just last month in May 24th. All right, so now I have another question for you guys, which is, can anyone on the course share any insights on how they think Compose multi-platform renders UI components on across these diverse platforms? That means across Android, iOS, desktop, and also web.
So right before we answer that, I believe Arian had his hand up. So
yeah, sorry, I have another question. Are there any famous company using this technology right now?
Using Compose multi-platform or Kotlin multi-platform?
Compose multi-platform.
Yeah, so Compose multi-platform is still in beta, so there are not a lot of companies using it, but Kotlin multi-platform has been stable for a while now. So we have actually a lot of companies using it. Cash App uses it, Netflix uses it, Quizlet. There are actually a lot of companies using it. I can share the link. I think that'll be better. Let me share a link to the JetBrains site showing the number of companies or the companies currently using Kotlin multi-platform. It's being used a lot in production.
Okay, thanks.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for asking that question. Now, I want to have a feel of the room. How many people have been using Compose multi-platform? Can you share any insights into what your experience has been? I mean, it will be good before we jump into the demonstration. It will be good to know, those on the call who already have like experience with Compose multi-platform who can also additionally share as we go into the demonstration. So please don't be shy to come off mute and let us know, how Compose multi-platform has been working for you, if you've been using it. And if we don't have anyone on here, it means that you're in the right place because Kwabena will definitely share more. So I guess that's one of the things, one of the reasons why you are here, to learn more about it. So Raju says in the chat that Compose multi-platform is the next step for me. So that's great. So Kwabena, I'll tell you, take it away, and share all you know about Compose multi-platform, because you have a teaming audience that wants to learn.
All right. So Compose multi-platform currently uses Skia under the hood, right? So so if we start with Android, on Android, Compose multi-platform uses Skia to render the UI on Android. And for other platforms, which is iOS and desktop, and also web, Compose multi-platform uses Skiko. So Skiko is basically Skia. So Compose multi-platform uses Skia for the entire rendering, but Skiko is basically a Kotlin platform, a Kotlin wrapper around Skia. So Skia is a very powerful 2D graphics library that, again, was developed by Google. And because of how versatile Skia is, it enables it to work across multiple platforms. So that was the main reason why JetBrains went with using Skia as the underlying rendering engine in Compose multi-platform. Actually, Flutter also used, maybe it's not using anymore, Skia. It previously was using Skia as the main rendering engine, but it looks like they have switched to another rendering engine called Impel. And Jetpack Compose, which I think someone asked the difference between these two a while ago. Jetpack Compose, which is different from Compose multi-platform, also uses Skia under the hood, even though it's actually indirectly. So Compose multi-platform though fully uses Skia. So Skia on Android and then Skiko on the other platforms. So let's move on to, So let's move on to the case study. So as I previously mentioned, I was looking to see if Compose multi-platform is ready for production, right? So let me switch to my desktop. All right. So when I was trying to trying out Compose multi-platform, I wanted to use somewhat complex design instead of just using a very simple design. I wanted to see if Compose multi-platform can indeed be used for production scale, production-like apps. So I saw this free Figma design. I can share the link in the chat for anyone who's interested. Right. So I saw this free Figma design, which is basically a 2021 Spotify app in the Figma community. So this is a free design that you can use. So I decided to implement some of these screens, actually not all of them, but most of these screens here in Compose multi-platform. Originally, I implemented them in Swift UI because I wanted to compare them, how it looks like on Swift UI or when it was one build with Swift UI and how it looks like on the other platforms. So let me share my simulators. So I have two simulators here and an Android emulator. All right. So the one on iPhone 15 here is the one running on Swift UI. This is the one on iPhone 15 Pro. I hope everyone is seeing the screen. All right. The one on iPhone 15 Pro uses Compose multi-platform, and the one on the Android emulator also uses Compose multi-platform. So let me quickly run through the UI. Again, this is just UI implementation. It has no functionality. So basically what I have is UIs and navigations to other screens. So let me start with the Swift UI one. So we have an email screen, a password screen, a gender screen, a name screen, and a screen for users to select artists, and another screen for users to select their podcasts, and then the main home screen, which we previously looked at in the slide. So in the main home screen, we have three tabs: the home screen, we also have the search screen, and the library screen. And one other screen I also implemented was this screen, which is the recent searches screen. So we can do the same on the iPhone 15 Pro simulator. So this is running the Compose multi-platform. The previous one we looked at, this is running Swift UI. This simulator though and this Android emulator are both running Compose multi-platform. So again, let's just walk through it. There's that same screens. So the email screen, password screen, gender screen, the name screen, the artist selection screen, the podcast selection screen, and finally the home screen. So again, let's move through the other screens as well. The set screen, which we saw in the Swift UI one, and the library screen as well. And the recent searches screen we saw as well. So this is running on Compose multi-platform. We can also look at the Android one. Let me quickly run through the screens as well. Email, password, gender, name, artist screen, podcast screen, home screen, search screen, the library screen, and then finally the recent searches screen. All right, so that is the implementation of the UI I saw on Figma. All right, so let's move on. So now we are coming to look at the,
Sorry, can I ask a question, please?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think something I just want to, because it's recently even the Compose implemented on their end, this navigation library that allows you to pass data from one screen to another screen using safety. I don't know. I see that you've done navigation here. How about the navigation stuff there? Does
Yeah,
it have the safety stuff there implemented?
we will get to the navigation approach I used. I'll talk about it in the technical implementation. We'll get to it very soon.
All right.
So now we can start looking at the implementation. So we can start with the very first one, which is setting up of the project. So since this is a Kotlin multi-platform project, let me switch to the Android ID. So since this is Kotlin multi-platform projects, when setting this up, you can use the Kotlin multi-platform app templates that Android Studio provides. If you don't have that, you would need to download the KMM plugin. I will show that very soon. So when creating the Compose multi-platform project, you need to make sure the underlying technology is Kotlin multi-platform. So you can, if it's an application, you can use the Kotlin multi-platform app templates. If you don't have the templates, you can download it in the plugins. So you have to make sure you have Kotlin multi-platform mobile plugin downloaded. So that's what you need to have for the templates to show up in your Android Studio templates. All right. So once you have this, the next thing to do would be to update your dependencies, right? So currently Kotlin multi-platform is now in beta, and then the latest version is 1.6.11. So I think the current approach that most developers are using, or we are encouraged to use, is to manage our dependencies in a TOML file or a YAML file. So we can add the dependency. So the most important dependencies to use Compose multi-platform is
You very Kavish.
the Compose dependency, and since you would also be running this on Android, you also need the Android activity Compose. You'd also need to add the plugins here, the Compose multi-platform plugin, and also the Compose compiler plugin. Then you would need to go into your project level build or Gradle file and also apply these plugins. So these are the most important ones related to Compose multi-platform. Then in your shared code, I have that here named as common. In your shared code or your shared module, you also need to apply that in your plugin section. So in this case, Compose multi-platform and also the Compose compiler. I hope the text is visible. If not, I can increase the text size. All right.
It's visible, very
It's
visible.
good. It's good. It's good.
All right, that's good. So once that is done, that means you are ready to use Compose multi-platform in your project. So I want to walk through how I implemented the Spotify UI using Compose multi-platform. So the first thing is the entry point, right? You have multiple platforms, but you still need to have an entry point where these two or these multiple platforms will call into. So Compose multi-platform, we are sharing our UI code. So we want these different platforms to be able to integrate into the common code, which is the entry point. So in the entry points, I have the Spotify UI app composable. So Compose multi-platform is actually very similar to, in terms of syntax, it's actually very similar to Jetpack Compose on Android. So if you know how to use Jetpack Compose on Android, Compose multi-platform is actually very straightforward. So the first thing is the entry point. So I have that here. It's a very simple composable called Spotify UI app. So that's the main entry point, and it's basically calling this app screen. So all these are in the common code, which is the shared code between platforms. In this demo, I'm only showing Android and iOS. I wasn't able to design the UI for desktop. I was mainly focusing on Android and iOS. So the Android module and also the iOS module projects will both depend on the shared code. I have named mine common. So in the shared code, we have the Spotify UI app composable, which is the entry point. So that means on Android, if I go into Android here, the Android projects, I pass this entry points into our set contents composable here. So that's only what you need to do on Android. for Android to start taking or start displaying stuff in a common module. The same for iOS. iOS is not that straightforward like in Android, but it's actually simple. So the first thing you need to do is in your common module, you need to go in iOS main and then create a controller. So iOS, before Swift UI, iOS was using UI kits, where you almost every UI you have to use a view controller to create and also coordinate it. So in Compose multi-platform, to be able to use your shared Compose multi-platform code in iOS, you also need to create a controller. So you can easily do that using this UI view controller lambda of function from Compose multi-platform to create the controller. So in here, I basically create a Spotify UI controller factory, which returns a controller. So it returns this Compose UI controller with the entry points of the Spotify UI app, which was defined in the common code as we've already seen. Once you've done that, you now need to go into your iOS projects and create an instance of this controller. So in this case, I create a Spotify UI controller and I implement this protocol or interface UI view controller representable. And in this make UI view controller function, I create a Spotify UI view controller factory we previously saw in the common name and return that controller. So that's basically what I need to do. And then in content view, I get access to the Spotify UI view controller. That's it. Now, whatever you render in your common module will be displayed by your targets. In this case, the Android module and also the iOS module. All right, I'm moving on to the next stage, which is implementing edge to edge display. But before I move forward, I don't know if anyone has questions regarding anyone has questions regarding what we've just seen. All right. So
Hello.
yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. So I have a question. Okay. So I think there is a part that is not very clear to me. Looking at the entry points for both the native code, I mean, how does the Compose multi-platform, components communicates with the native code, like the iOS code and the Android code? Looking at the entry points you shared, I couldn't figure out how that would happen. So I don't know if you're going to get to that part, or
Yeah, I
you can just throw more light on how that works.
All right, I can go over that part. So in the common module or the shared code, we have the Spotify UI, which is the entry point, right? So we've seen that. Now let's start with Android. So this is the Android projects, and in the main activity of the Android projects, we link it to the common code. So in main activity, I'm using activity compose so that I have access to this set contents function, which basically takes in a composable. So I pass the entry point to this lambda or this function, and that's it. I have linked Android to the common code. So that's it for Android. I don't know if you are okay with that, then I can move on to iOS.
No, I'm not. That is not really clear. How do you share data now between the view and the native code? Like, let's say you want to pass some data from your native code to the view. How do you do that? How does that happen?
Yeah, in this UI, I'm not passing data from your UI. I'm not passing data from the desktop or from Android to the shared code, but we'll look at that using expect actual. I'll show that soon.
Can I quickly clarify something there?
Yeah.
Okay, so for this, I believe in the common folder, you just write maybe the application, the communication, navigation, and the likes, and all what's it called? KMP would do is that, okay, in subsequent platform, you just call the beginning, and that will just trigger it, and it will use that rendering engine to perform the rest. So you don't need to specially write the code for Android or specially write the code for iOS. You just write it in the command and just call them. So they now know how to work with that. Does that clarify that?
Yeah, so that's it for most of the cases. There are some cases where you'd want to share something from your platforms.
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
in this Spotify UI project, I didn't share anything from the platforms to the common code, but you can do that using something called expect actuals. Let me share the link to that now. So with expect actual, you can define platform specific code using, so expect actual is almost like a protocol or an interface. So you can define platform specific stuff in Android, platform specific stuff in iOS or desktop, and then your common code would call this expect actual. So let's say you have a UUID generator. In Android, you would use a UUID class. So you would use expect actual. So let's say UUID generator, and you have a function called create. So each of these platform would implement this expect actual, which is like an interface or a protocol. And then for the function, which is create, Android will return an Android specific UUID, desktop will return a desktop specific UUID, and iOS will also return an iOS specific UUID. But this code will be called in the common name or the common code or the shared code. So whenever the shared code calls this function, UUID generator or creates, if you are running the code on Android, you would get an Android generated UUID. If you're running on another platform, then another platform generated UUID. I don't know if this is clear.
Yes, thank you. That actually answered my question.
All right.
Yep.
You're welcome. All right, I have 15 minutes left, so I need to hurry. All right, so let's move on to the next part, which is implementing edge-to-edge display. So if we again look at the UI, so let me go back to the UI here 1 moment. If we again look at the UIs here, we can see that we have an edge-to-edge display here, right? So we have a background that is bleeding into the edge of the screen. So when implementing this, I wanted to see if I could do the exact same in Compose multi-platform. So the sad news is that currently there's no way to implement edge-to-edge display in the Compose multi-platform way. You would need to do that in a separate, or you need to do that for each platform. So on Android, let me switch to the Android IDE. So on Android, what you can do is use this enable edge-to-edge function, and you can get this from this dependency. So, yep, once you have Android X app compat or app compat dependency, you get access to the enabled edge-to-edge display, which you can use. And what this does is that on that particular screen, you won't have status bars, or you have translucent or transparent status bars, which means the background will be able to bleed to the edge. On iOS is actually very straightforward. What you need to do on iOS is basically add this modifier, which is ignore safe area. So this is a modifier you can apply on any Swift UI view, and it basically ignores the safe area, which is your status bar and also your navigation, the bottom navigation bar. So that means that if you have any UI in here, it's going to bleed through your screen. You're going to have that UI, or you're going to have the layout that I previously showed in the Figma design. Let me quickly move on to the next part. So the next part I also wanted to work on was the dark theme. So if you look at the UI in Figma, the Spotify UI is basically a dark design from almost all the screens, actually all the screens. So I wanted to also have by default a dark theme for each of these. This also, you can't do that currently in a Compose multi-platform manner. You would need to do that separately on each platform. So again, on Android, what you can do is typically when you create a project in Compose multi-platform or Kotlin multi-platform, your entry points in the Android project, which is your main activity, subclasses, component activity. With the component activity, you won't have access to app compat delegates, which is what I wanted to use to set the DAC theme. So you would need to add the app compat dependency in your Android module and then add this line, which basically sets your entire theme of the application to a DAC theme. So that's it for Android. On iOS, also very strict. iOS is actually much simpler. In iOS, you just need to add this .preferred color scheme and then pass in the color scheme. So in this case, I wanted a DAC theme for everything. So DAC. All right, let's move on to the next part. The next part
Sorry.
was, go ahead.
Yeah, this DAC team, is it the DAC team? Is it coming from the common code from the Compose, or is actually picking the theme from the specific platform that
this
doesn't connect the two platform at all?
Yeah, so this is the specific platform. The main UI, though, was written in Compose multi-platform. So setting the background to black, all those are in the shared code. But in here is, I want to give the entire application a DAC theme. Sometimes when you start an application, you would maybe see a blank screen for a few seconds before the main application shows. So that blank screen, I wanted that to be DAC by default. And you can't do that entry point, or you can't do that splash screen stuff in Compose multi-platform. You'd have to do that separately on these platforms. But the actual UI, setting the background, everything, all those are in the common code.
Yeah, but in this case, the control for whether, for example, let's say, okay, you want to make it to support that team and the light team together. Maybe you want to be the users to be able to switch through the platform. These things are being, maybe is it going to be implemented on the platform specific, or is going to be on the common code?
Yeah, you would have to do that in the common code. So Compose gives you a way to set themes based on the particular configuration at that time. But what you need to switch to those themes, you would need to do that separately on each platform. Currently, there's no way to do that using Compose multi-platform.
Okay.
All right, so the next thing is
One more question, sorry, please.
Go ahead.
So as regards I understand the case of the splash screen, which is platform specific implementation. How about the logo? I guess that is platform specific too, right? Or does Compose, does the KMP make provision for that? The app logo.
On the device, the app logo that's shown on the device.
Yes, the app logo that shows on the device.
Yeah,
In the launcher icon.
Yes, the launcher icon. Yeah, that's the word. The launcher icon.
You would need to do that again separately on each platform.
Okay, it's platform specific. All right.
Yeah, currently there's no way to do that in a Compose multi-platform.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So the next thing I want us to look at, I'm not sharing the main screen. Oh, all right. So the next thing I want us to look at is, I don't know if anyone can see my Android Studio. Okay. All right, so the next thing I want us to look at is platform-specific navigation icons. So if you look at, again, I need to show my desktop now so that I can show exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So if you look at the Compose multi-platform running on Swift or running on Android, iOS, sorry, and I also look at the one running on Android. Let me close this and start again. If you look at the create account screen, you can see that the navigation icons are different. So I wanted, this one I also wanted to try out when I was looking at this. I wanted to give each device the look and feel of that particular platform. So on iOS, typically you would have a chevron left icon for your back arrow or your back icon. And on Android, you would have a back arrow for the back icon. So I wanted to do this as well when I was implementing this. So the way to do this is using what I previously mentioned called expect actuals. So let me switch to the ID. So in common code, you need to define sort of like an interface or a protocol. So I have this Spotify UI icons here. All right. But first, I want to show this. So this is on expect actual, which I previously mentioned. On the common code, you would define. So in this case, I need a property. So I want each of the platforms that are depending on the common code to always return some property called platform. So I define that expectation. So expect in the common code. Then in Android, so let's look for each of the platforms. So in this case, Android and iOS. Let me move into Android. So in Android, I have an implementation for this, which returns just platform.android. So what I wanted to do is I want to know at runtime which platform is running this code. So on Android, I return platform.android, and also on iOS, I return platform.iOS. So I needed to know this so I can determine which icon to display. So when we land on that screen, which is the create account screen, and I'm displaying the back icon. So let me show that screen. So sign up. All right, so in the sign up screen, I have a back icon. So let me scroll down. Yeah. So I have a back icon that is displayed in the application bar, which is this navigation icon. And as you can see, I'm referencing an icon called back. But I wanted to display different icons based on the platform. So at runtime, I can, since each platform is returning a particular value, so Android is returning Android, iOS is returning iOS, I can know at runtime, okay, iOS is the device currently running this project. So based on the platform, I return an icon for that particular platform. So on Android, we typically use an arrow back icon, and on iOS, we typically see a chevron back icon. So that's how I was able to implement the different icons for each platform. So if you're also working with Compose multi-platform, you can also use this approach to give each platform the native look and feel. All right, I'm moving on to the next section, which is the most important parts. Someone asked the question previously, which is navigation options. So in navigation, when we look at the navigation options currently in Android or in Compose multi-platform, the only one currently available by default by JetBrains is the experimental Compose multi-platform library, which uses the approach that was previously used in Jetpack Compose. So that means you have strings as your destinations, and it's not type safe. So because it's not type safe, I didn't want to use that. I wanted to use type safe library. So currently, Jetpack Compose have a type safe navigation library, but that is not ported to Compose multi-platform. Your Compose multi-platform does not have an implementation for that yet. So that means you can't use the one by Jetpack Compose or the one by Google. And hopefully Compose multi-platform implements a similar solution for us. But in the meantime, I wanted to use a type-safe navigation library. And currently, the type-safe navigation library is available. Decompose, we also have Decompose Router, we have Voyager. So I went with Voyager for this. So let me go through the implementation for Voyager. It's very quick. So what you need to do is to add the dependencies for Voyager to your common build on Gradle. So these are the dependencies, Voyager Navigator and also Voyager transitions. So these are in the YAML file for our dependencies. So 1 minute. So I'm currently using Voyager 1.0.0, and the dependencies are defined here. And these are implemented or dependent on in the common main module. And how you use this is, since this is composed multi-platform, all the navigation can be done in the shared code. So if we go into the entry points and go into app screen, this is where the implementation is. So I use this class called navigator from, or this function navigator from the Voyager library. So currently I have two navigators, one where the user is logged in and one where the user is not logged in. So if the user is logged in, we display the main screen, which we previously saw. And if the user is not logged in, we display the start screen. Currently, again, this doesn't have any functionality. So I currently just have this dummy class, use case class, where we change the value of its login. So let me go in. So we change the value of this is login to trigger the change of the UI. So that's it for navigation. I'm running out of time. The next one I want to talk about is resources, but it looks like I'm running out of time. So one thing I noticed with resources, if you've done navigation, if you've done resources in Android, you can use the exact same approach. So in Android, if you have special characters like apostrophe, you can omit them, right, using the backslash. But in this case, in compose multi-platform, using that does not work. So currently, the only way to make this work is to use Unicode characters. So I wanted to display what is your email, but using backslash would not work. The project will fail to compile. And if you surround this in quotation marks, you would see the apostrophe in when the UI renders. So the only way currently to bypass this is to use Unicode characters, which means that if you have applications where you need to have different translations, you're going to have issues, especially for the translators, since this, looking at these Unicode characters, if you're not familiar with it, it's going to be a bit tricky for them. All right, the next thing I want to talk about, I'm out of time, so I can just conclude. So compose multi-platform is actually promising, right? As we've seen, you can build production-ready application, even though it's still in beta. I think you can build production-ready applications with compose multi-platform. So, however, there are still some caveats that deserve attention, which is what I have previously mentioned. So, one, if we look at the string resources, you have to use Unicode characters for apostrophes, which would be a challenge for translators in case you are looking to translate this in different languages. Also, there's currently no built-in mechanism to programmatically switch locales in your application. For example, you have a language screen, you can switch from English to French, and it switches. So in Android, it's switching the configuration. Currently, there's no way to do that in compose multi-platform. You can't also do that for each platform. So that's one caveat to looking to develop it for production applications. So I'm out of time, so I think I'll end it here. I would publish an article on this and share it in the channel. Some of the things that I wasn't able to mention, you can read them as well. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Kotlin. I had no idea that this was going to be a live tutorial. Like, you went really deep into this.